Martial arts and anime go hand in hand, at least the ones with any type of fighting in it. I've been watching a lot of UFC lately and reading some action manga, and it made me do this video. No matter the style you choose, every art of fighting you prefer can be helpful in multiple ways. If you just want self-defense, jiu-jitsu, judo, and sometimes wrestling is the most common you'll see recommended, mainly because it's primarily all about technique rather than punching or kicking power. If you just want a fighter, kickboxing, boxing, karate are the go-tos, but there are people who pick a style sometimes to get in better shape and change their life. I think RDJ is a perfect example of this. If you know anything about his interview and how he got his life together, he did jiu-jitsu training along with obviously some dieting and whatnot. In anime, especially shonen, martial arts is used all the time. JJK has plenty of sequences and moments karate or kickboxing takes place, especially in Sukuna, Itadori, and Gojo fights. There are others, but they have the most. Someone like Toji I view as a weapon specialist more than anything. He can box, but he's definitely a sword or gun type of guy. Naruto is notorious for some of the best hand-to-hand fights in the entire medium, whether anime or manga form. Especially Kakashi versus Obito, with them countering each other and mixing the combat in with ninjutsu. Rock Lee and Might Guy fights, Naruto versus Sasuke of course. Many styles have been shown and represented throughout the medium's history, even with the big ass Gundams. There are three, however, that I think perfectly display martial arts with a cinematic effect to it. The most popular martial arts manga not named Dragon Ball, Baki, the Grappler. Now this series is mainly about Baki becoming the alpha male martial arts god, but his primary goal is to defeat his father, Yujiro Hanma. As far as the action goes, anime and manga are both pretty solid. However, the manga has a certain style to it where I don't think it would be for everyone. But after reading the manga, I got used to it and I really started to like it in certain parts. Itagaki's style goes from this is pretty raw to what the fuck am I looking at? Baki as a series isn't linear, so it's a lot of whiplash sometimes with the direction of the arcs. 1 minute we have an arc with Baki meeting Muhammad Ali Jr. and the next Jack Hama's fighting some Russian bum at a phone booth. I would say that appeal is the spectacle of it all, considering these beefy jack bastards are all walking around the world just trying to test their strength whenever they feel like it. Now there are some good character writing, primarily with the Hanmas and Hanayama, and some of the recurring characters that you see throughout the series. I'd also throw Pickle in there. I like the fact that he's a giant from the dinosaur age, unfrosted into the modern age. And he's a major attraction for fighters, and he's kind of learning how to adapt to human everyday life, even though he still eats people. Yujiro is probably still the main reason I really checked out the series and stayed with it. I don't know about anybody else, but whenever he appears, my attention locks in. He's such a unique character because the dude is OP and the most powerful character in the series, and his title is the strongest creature. In Baki the Grappler, he's this father addicted to his son's growth so he can fight him and have a worthy challenger. He's a shitty dad and messes up everything associated with Baki, but then you get into the Baki, the strongest part of the series, and Yujiro kind of becomes more so like a force of nature, because if it's not a tournament taking place, he's just wandering around messing with people or nearly killing them. But for some reason, he might be the most beloved character in the series. Now, I haven't read past Baki vs. Yujiro. I do know about Masashi Miyamoto. How he got incorporated in this verse, I don't know. But hey, Baki is really a bizarre world to be in, if we're being honest. As far as the fights go, Baki can be very exaggerated in the way they display martial arts, mainly the durability aspect of it. My only real problem with it is that the flow of action is too stiff sometimes. That goes for anime and manga, so the fights aren't the prettiest sometimes. But I would say they are very enjoyable to read depending on the characters that are fighting. For example, I'm not big on Retsu, so I don't really care for his fights that much. And his karate was very dull to me. I think Baki the main character shows a cool balance of MMA, even though you can boil down his style to a mix of kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, especially with bigger opponents. He tries to put a string on someone. You are similar, except he only wants to knock you out. There's some street fighting incorporated, which I fuck with, karate of course, and some judo. If I had to recommend 3 fights to at least watch or read, the first one would be Hanayama versus Spec. These two big bastards had a crazy street fight. One of the more violent fights in Baki with Hanayama having a grenade blown up in his mouth at some point. Hanayama has some strength feats of lifting and throwing Spec, who is one of the tallest and biggest characters, I'd say in the top 5. The mix of Hanayama's Yakuza street fight style and insane durability and Spec's chaotic, unethical way of fighting made a pretty special moment for the series. Second would have to be Pickle versus Jack Hama. Some of the offense in this fight took place with their mouse. Yes, you heard that correctly. Both of them have a fighting style that isn't a real fighting style, and Jack's signature is his biting, and Pickle just fights like an animal. Coming into this, Pickle had already picked off 2 other fighters. Jack was a surprise opponent for him and technically his tougher opponent. It's relatively short, but it's very impactful for both characters, especially Jack. Third is the final fight of Baki the Strongest, Baki versus Yujiro. I have it as one of the best final battles I've ever read. The only drag about this fight is the amount of fucking talking when they get to the street. Other than that, this fight is great. You can feel the tension between the two because this rematch has been built up for so long. You can see Baki's growth and strength and how he pushes and counters Yujiro's attacks. Some good exchanges and unique to say the least. Yujiro's brutality and Baki's sharpness with his kickboxing, it's a must read or watch spectacle. The King series is a very fun read and I would say is the most inviting of the martial arts manga as it explains everything in a simpler manner and the story is narrow until you get to the King and Omega's part and some branches start to scatter. But King and Ashura is a manga centered around a tournament where company owners and their respective representatives compete in a tournament that happens in the span of a week. The prize they are fighting for is money, recognition, and empty property. It's ran by the King Association, which governs all of these tournaments, and for this tournament, there aren't any rules. You can use whatever style or tactic you want, as long as you don't use any weapons. Killing is allowed in the tournament, so they kind of push the boundaries of how far you can go with some of the stuff. Oma as a main character, I will say, is the weaker of the three protagonists I'll talk about, mainly because in Ashura we do follow him throughout the tournament, but the side characters and their stories and connections to their manager is really what makes the series special. Anyone who reads this comes away with multiple favorite characters and not everyone's list will be the same. What makes Oma as a main character feel special is the fact that he uses a style that no one else uses and he's evolving within the matches. And Oma throughout the tournament is getting stronger, but it's taking a toll on him more than anyone else. Kingen's highlights are the various amounts of martial arts respectively. Even something like Judo, the Manga Yabako, makes it look like the most badass discipline you've ever seen when you reach King and Omega. It also highlights the advantages and disadvantages of some certain styles. Like if you're a boxer going against a wrestler, you're probably going to get dropped on your head or on your back most of the time. The art is very consistent, it gets better, but where it starts isn't bad at all. It just looks like Yabako solidified what he wanted, and the lines are bolder and the look is more intense. King and Omega is more of a series surrounding the mysteries of the Nico style and the predecessors who use the style. Also, the Kure clan and their history becomes a big part of the story as well, and with my favorite character being Kure Ryan, you know I was locked in. Also, King and Omega is followed by two protagonists this go around, and their dynamic is also a focal point of the series. As Kogen and Ryuki are raw prospects who have some skill, but aren't on an elite level at all yet. And as individuals, they have to figure out who they are and what they want to be after being around some of the best fighters in the world. Picking out fights is kind of hard because I'm not gonna lie, like I really can't name that many fights like that because of the fact that it would be spoilers. But I would say any of Imai Cosmo's fights, he's mainly a jiu-jitsu fighter and a wrestler. Seeing how much anticipation it is to see him set up his fights and make people tap out or figure out if he can win is definitely a roller coaster. And depending on the opponent, sometimes he goes about it a different way. Any of the Oma fights is fun to watch. Basically, he uses the Nico style, which is like a mix of Kung Fu and MMA to say the least. And of course, you know, my two that I kind of think are my favorite or starting to become my favorites, Gaolon, a boxer. I think he's one of the characters where you're learning that this guy is more than just a warrior type guy. There's more beneath him than that we really are seeing. Ryan he's just a crazy guy. It's something about the raw crazy characters I just love. If you watch or read this series, he is a fan favorite for a reason. Everything that you think this series is trying to explain to you, Ryan either goes against or just takes it to the extreme. Tough, my favorite of the three series, with who I believe is the best martial arts main character of all time, Kichi Miyazawa, or you can call him Kibo. Kibo is super passionate about martial arts to an obsessive level, where all he wants to do at 17 and beyond is train and become a martial artist on the level of his father and learn Nanshin Kagyu style. That style is basically everything martial arts at its peak. His family is nothing but a bunch of beasts that have different dynamics with them. His father in the first Tough series, Legend of the High School Iron Fist Tough, the one in 1993, is there with Kichi throughout most of the manga in some capacity, whether overseeing him or right by his side. He teaches him the ways of being a strong martial artist while refraining from killing, although the Nanshin Kagyu style implies murder in about most of the elite techniques. Instead, he teaches him the techniques that heal and help people. Then there's the uncle who basically knows everything regarding the family and pops up here and there to help or test Kichi. And the last is the other uncle, Kiryu Miyazawa, whose appearance you can probably guess he's not the most high morale type of guy. He's the ruthless side of the Nanshin Kagyu and is someone who wants to explore the limits of the human body. Well, that's the way I'll put it for now. It's the second oldest behind Baki in terms of series length, so there are certain references that you might not know, like old wrestlers or fighters in real life. Kibo's journey is fun and fascinating to read because of the shifts in the reason he fights. Every fight will have a different purpose or meaning behind it. It just shows the growth in Kibo, not only in skill but in philosophy and how to better himself. It's truly a manga about a young boy becoming a man and learning about the values of life and death through martial arts, trying to either change people for the better or to view things from their perspective and meet them head on with his fist. It has my favorite art style between the three, and especially when you read the sequel Tough, where the scans are better and Tensei uses photorealism in some of his full page panels that kick at you off guard when you go to the next page. It's between Tough and Kengan on who I think does the best when it comes to fight sequences. However, I think what Tough does better than all three is making every fight feel different. Kengan and Baki both try this, mainly with different style fighters, but about 70% of it boils down to who can throw the best punch or the best kick. In Tough, there are fights where the last man standing, the best KO punch wins. In Tough, there are fights where it boils down to who can land the best punch at the right time, or an endurance battle. But there are a lot of fights that play in exhaustion and injuries. A fighter who will have like a messed up leg going into it could be targeted and not be the reason he loses, or psychological reasons as to why they didn't do certain moves against friends or foes. Everything can kind of go into it. And sometimes those types of fights make you root for the opponent. They also play into the characters' relationships pretty well too. Some will go all out against opponents while others will refuse to do certain moves. Side characters in Tough can be very lovable and just has this nostalgic feel to them. It reminds me a lot of like anime, especially in the early 2000s, where anime was kind of going through this phase where the MC was known for fighting someone and then they eventually became their friend or ally. Luckily, not all of them become losers after they lose fight again. Also, I think Jet and Garcia are dope antagonists for Kibo, as they serve as the contrasting dynamics between two things that revolve around Kibo's character: a father-son relationship, the difference between Kibo's father and Kiryu as a father towards Jet, and how Jet views Kiryu based on his past interactions with him and how they met. And Garcia plays as a powerful mirror to Kibo, as Garcia shows the strength he attained with no emotions and connections to people. Even the nature behind Garcia's submissions just feel different, as it has like a haunting aura compared to Kibo's that has kind of like a light and almost hopeful aura. So in terms of like a solo journey for a main character in a martial arts manga, I think Kibo is at the top. There is a new MMA manga I've been reading recently. It has 138 plus chapters called Red Blue, and it's a traditional sports style MMA manga, so it won't be as crazy and bombastic as a Baki. However, that doesn't stop the manga from feeling epic and fulfilling. If you always wanted something like a Hajime no Ippo but MMA style, this is the closest you'll get to that. The MC, Alba Suzuki, is a really intriguing main character because he's not necessarily shy, but he's just not socially inept enough to interact with certain people. So he's extremely blunt when it comes to how he feels and his perspective towards things. And it's a funny character trait for him, especially when he starts training and points out obvious stuff. He doesn't have a goal in mind during school until they show his friend, quote unquote, Kenshin, who's Mr. Perfect in school. I mean, he's friends with everyone. He's a prodigy at MMA. His fighting style is fun to watch. Generally nice dude that happens to be a superstar outside of school. And Alba can't stand him because of everything I just stated. And the good part about this is he's not edgy or angsty in his dislike for Kenshin. It just rubs him the wrong way. The way they reveal it is definitely in the most unconventional way I've seen before. Like any Japanese schoolboy, he isn't a social butterfly. He gets bullied by the most rough-looking guy there, named Sanosuke Hiwase, who is a prominent character alongside Suzuki during his fight journey. Others around him know he gets picked on a lot, but a day comes and while outside of school, Iwase does his typical punching bag routine on Alba. Kenshin comes in and drops him with a gut punch. Afterwards, they have a conversation and Kenshin teaches him how to throw a punch to defend himself, and Suzuki ends up developing a good enough form to throw a good right hand punch. Alba in this is uncomfortable in the fact that he's never been comfortable around Kenshin. It sounds like jealousy, but he can't word or describe it as that. And Alba now prepares to go back to his peaceful and ordinary life, even though he's always been interrupted in that lifestyle. But right when they get ready to split ways, Kenshin offers him to join his gym and train there. Alba just, I guess, reaches his breaking point and tries to punch Kenshin, but gets countered and dropped on the floor and even gets stomped on. Alba tells him the truth about how he feels towards him and about Kenshin in their relationship and friendship, and that one day he wants to punch him in the face. Now, Kenshin does take this as a goal that he achieved because now Alba has a dream, but Alba has found his dream in life, and his dream is just centered around pettiness and envy. And yet it's handled perfectly, and the series is great in my opinion. I really enjoy Alba's journey so far and the direction his character's going. The better he's getting, the more dangerous he's becoming. He's not physically imposing or even powerful, but Suzuki, being a greedy learner and a very smart character, makes his jujutsu a huge problem for his opponents. Also, none of his fights feel like a cop-out due to the nature of the sport. He goes against powerhouses, but he can beat them because he sets them up for his trademark triangle choke so perfectly and soundly. It works, especially if the knockout artists are not good on the ground. I was really impressed with the side characters and how they were written too, because they are established and developing a quick style that feels like you know so much about these characters, but you know there's more that can be tapped into. The Shark Gym is a great supporting cast for Suzuki. Everyone in the gym is an underdog, even the head coach and leader Tequila, who screams fan favorite just off design. He was a villain in the MMA world from a character and promo standpoint, and that energy and persona trickles down onto his students in a unique way to characterize their fighting motivations and styles in the ring. This will be a perfect time to get into the series, as all of the chapters have been translated to English. It's been translated weekly so far, so if you want to get into it, definitely do so. The final boss has been set up, and you'll not only see the Shark Gym progression, but others on their way up in the world of MMA. If you've seen this video, thank you for taking the time to watch it. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Leave a like, it helps, and of course, share the video with people that you know. I'll holler at y'all in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, Kim Jong, yeah, big bomb.